Alright guys, episode 4 has finally landed, and if you've been riding with this channel since the beginning, you already know what this moment means. We've been piecing this together video by video with every Easter egg and every theory, but that was all leading us to here. Because episodes 1 through 3 gave us everything a great story needs. Drake's team successfully built the world and brought us into it. We met the ICEMAN character, we eventually saw that he did have some allies, but we soon met the villains who were chasing him and conspiring against him in the shadows. The bag was introduced as this major plot device in the story because it was obvious that everything revolved around it. We watched as our main character faced difficult situations and they built a sense of danger around him, but also he seemed to be several steps ahead. We saw him meet with secret characters, some that provided him with information, and some that seemed to unlock a character transformation for him. We also got some serious hints that someone powerful, someone higher up, might have been on his side the whole time. However, the story hit a major cliffhanger when we watched him get pushed to his absolute limit. He surrenders and everything that he was holding on to was taken from him. We reached a moment in the story where it felt like everything was over. And for a while, Drake's team fooled a lot of people, but many of us knew that there had to be more to the story, and we were right because episode 4 is the resolution. In today's breakdown, we finally see that the Iceman and Pinocchio character arc does come to a close, but it doesn't happen in just one video. It closes across multiple videos in the episode 4 stream. This is the most difficult breakdown that I've ever done on this channel, by far. But before I can go any further, I need to talk about today's sponsor, ZocDoc. One thing I've realized as I've gotten older is it's way too easy to put things off, not just things like working on projects or mowing the lawn, but your health too. I feel like most of us have had that thing we've been meaning to get checked out for weeks, maybe months, but we keep telling ourselves we'll deal with it later. One of the things that I've been terrible with in the past is renewing my meds when the prescription runs out. Then when I've tried to fulfill it last minute, it can take over a week to even get an appointment with my doctor just for them to write a new script. And there's been times when I've went days without my meds, which is really not good. That's where ZocDoc comes in. ZocDoc is a free website that helps you find and book appointments with doctors near you. You can search through more than 150,000 providers across 200 plus specialties, filter by insurance, read reviews from real patients, compare doctor profiles, and see actual appointment openings before you book. What I like most about this is you can do it all online. There's no waiting on hold, no back and forth phone calls. You can literally see available appointments and book one instantly. And in many cases, appointments are available within 24 to 72 hours, sometimes even that same day. And the reason I bring this up is I know how easy it is to put things off that are actually really important. I am definitely a habitual procrastinator when it comes to things like this, and ZocDoc really does make it easy. So if there's an appointment you've been putting off, or maybe you're even trying to find a new doctor or find a doctor at all, you don't have to wait anymore because you do have ZocDoc. I know it seems like a really small step, but simply clicking the link in the description is a huge step towards prioritizing your health. Taking care of your health just got easier. Head to ZocDoc.com/thedirt. That's ZocDoc.com/thedirt to get started and finally check that appointment off your to-do list. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring today's video and for helping us all take better care of our health. The episode opens with a familiar vehicle tied directly to the storyline, the Iceman truck from episode 1, and it was in that episode where Drake used very old footage of himself moving through the city, reflecting on where he came from. Now in episode 4, he brings that imagery back full circle. We see him arriving back in Toronto, and throughout this rollout, the idea of reconnecting with who he was before he signed his deal seems to be a recurring theme. And you'll see this continue in this episode and on the album. As we move through this intro, the stream slowly starts to reveal more of Toronto's downtown core. We see familiar landmarks and logos like the Blue Jays and the Rogers Center, but nothing stands out more than the CN Tower, which is a true national treasure. At this point in the stream, the tower isn't glowing with any particular color. It actually looks very lifeless, and this is a rare occurrence that only seems to happen when a fallen soldier comes home or sometimes they'll dim the tower during a tragic event. Now, this is really important because this symbolism truly connects with the storyline that Drake is telling later, but you'll also notice the CN Tower itself becomes one of the central and most important filming locations in this entire ICEMAN project. They're doing this for the city and the people from the city. The first song we hear in this opening portion of the video ends up being the intro track on the ICEMAN album, Make Them Cry, and pairing these visuals of the city with this record honestly couldn't have made more sense because the entire song feels deeply Toronto coded. It's a very personal track that feels rooted in Drake's identity. He talks about his family, the city, his friends, his enemies, and honestly, every time I listen to this track, I still get goosebumps, and you can even see the first time I heard it, I even got a little emotional on stream because Drake does a really great job of pulling the listener directly into his life and his perspective. Next, we get one of the most beautiful shots in the entire episode. The CN Tower suddenly lights up in blue and begins to gradually freeze, almost like the entire city is being pulled into the ICEMAN era in real time. Drake's company Dream Crew, led by Matt Babel, clearly wanted to do something special for the city, and the timing makes it even more meaningful because this year marks the CN Tower's 50th anniversary. The tower is the most recognizable symbol of Toronto, and Drake has tied himself to it for years. He used it in the Headlines video, he famously used it on the cover of Views, and during OVO Fest in 2017, he even built a replica version of the tower as part of the stage design. So seeing it become a major visual centerpiece in ICEMAN is definitely a really dope moment for the city.
We have never seen it lit up like this. Only Drake could pull something like this off.
To pull off the stunt, they brought in a man named Anil Mulber and his company Studio AM. Now, for people who aren't familiar with the CN Tower, it does already have some lights built into it, but it's just a small vertical strip running up the center of the structure, and then obviously the circular top section lights up as well. But what you're seeing here in ICEMAN is way beyond the tower's normal presentation. In order to make this happen, they used 75 projectors, and each one was valued at $200,000 each, and the entire process was incredibly difficult to pull off. What you're looking at here is a real-time 3D animation being projection mapped directly onto the tower itself. It's not CGI added after the fact, it was physically happening live on the structure in real time. You'll also notice that a particular shot that Drake's team chooses to focus on was specifically framed with the colors blue, green, and red, and at this point I'm sure everyone knows just how important these colors have been as it pertains to the rollout, and by the end of this stream, we see what those colors meant. This cost $15 million for just the tower, just that one stunt. When the intro track of Make Them Cry finishes, the scene switches and the episode opens up with a voice that we all recognize, DJ Academics.
I've been waiting for 2 whole years for this album.
And honestly, I couldn't have been happier to see this happen, and you can even see my excitement in real time on the stream because not only is Ak my friend, but he truly deserves this moment more than anyone else. For years now, he's been Drake's loudest and most loyal supporter, but something that people have held over his head is the fact that he had never met Drake in person. Even if you don't like Ak, I think you could admit that this was pretty dope and that the guy deserves it. We see Academics placed inside a vintage radio set, and that alone feels symbolic. Radio is part of the old industry. It's the world that Ak openly admitted he wanted to be accepted by, but they would never embrace him. But instead of waiting for those people to let him in, he just built his own thing. Academics started posting content to YouTube in 2012, and that decision changed the landscape of hip-hop media forever. He didn't come through traditional radio, he didn't come through a major network, he built his own platform and became impossible to ignore. One of the biggest themes around ICEMAN is directly linked to independence, and Academics is one of the clearest symbols of just that. I think Drake probably sees that in Ak, and that's what he really respects about him. As far as the visuals, we do see some old mixers. There is a Hennessy bottle in the set, which is a staple when it comes to Ak. We also have the red Lebanese logo on the wall. This company was heavily involved with the Plot Twist account, all the ICEMAN streams, and the zine that we got from Drake, which is also included in the set. By the way, I'm still doing a zine breakdown. I got like 12,000 words wrote for it. It's pretty close. In the segment, Academics is saying something we've heard from him many times before. He's talking about how Drake has frozen the industry out, and in a lot of ways, he did. Drake basically stopped doing features and stopped playing the role that he had been playing for his entire career. I see people try to argue this, but the data is more than clear. The guy simply stopped doing favors for the label, and it's very blatant. And that is ICEMAN, because when he did that, he literally changed the weather. Like, you know, people noticed. Once the segment from AC ends, we see some beautiful drone shots of the city at night, and I wanted to make sure to highlight things like this because whoever captured this footage really did some outstanding work. We then hear the song Dust, which is the second track on the album, and it fits so perfect with the visuals, it's almost like the song was made for this moment. We see a line of women, all different nationalities, different backgrounds, standing together, waiting for the night to begin. They're all having fun and they don't think anything else of it. And really it's with this single shot where you see exactly what it means to be Canadian, and especially from a city like Toronto. What you see here is the reality of our culture, and we're proud of it. You know, I feel like most of us grew up with the understanding that, yeah, this place was built by a lot of people that didn't come from here, but they built something really dope, and we're proud of it. The line of women makes total sense because at the beginning of the track Dust, Drake is specifically talking to the ladies. He even mentions his previous album, Some Sexy Songs for You, acknowledging super early into the album that he hasn't forgotten about the women, but with ICEMAN he is on a whole other mission. This album isn't structured at all like a typical Drake project because it's literally all rap, and a large portion of the project, the guy's just rapping his ass off. The track then completely changes tone. When the beat drops, we get a much more dark and sinister energy. Then we see comedian Shane Gillis in the back of a police car, but he's not driving. He's a police officer waking up in the back seat while Drake's son Adonis and his friend are in the front controlling the wheel. Shane tells them to pull over, but the kids completely ignore him. This is a TPS, Toronto Police Service car, something you've probably heard Drake reference in his music before. A few visual details stand out. The license plate reads HACC 717, which was a request from Shane Gillis as it stands for Harrisburg Area Community College, and the 717 area code in Pennsylvania where he's from. They even changed the Ford emblem on the front and modified it to read Phil, which is Shane's father's name. Another detail I couldn't help but notice was the police car was numbered 2732, and this is actually direct from the Jewish Torah, and it means fear, anxiety, or trembling. The other thing that this video definitely focuses on is the colors of red and blue, which is not only something linked to the ICEMAN rollout itself, but you'll see these colors show up constantly throughout this episode 4 stream. These colors show up a lot. In the scene, the kids disobey Shane and go on a reckless drive through the city, and the whole video fits so perfectly with the track because it carries this aggressive, cold theme. However, casting Shane Gillis specifically is really interesting simply because he alluded to Drake liking younger girls back in 2019. This was a clip that went extremely viral during the battle with Kendrick in 2024 due to the nature of the angles that Kendrick took. Something that didn't go viral was the fact that Shane shortly after denied it and said he didn't mean it. With that said, you'll soon see that by using Shane Gillis in this scenario, it flips the claims on its head. First of all, Shane is a police officer with 2 younger boys, one of them being Drake's son, and that's already ironic, but really it's what Shane says at the end of the video that's really creative and interesting.
Those kids were awesome. I want to hang out with those kids. It's kind of weird. Fuck. The cameras are on.
So Shane basically says he feels like the kids are cool, even cool enough to hang out with, but then immediately catches himself because he realizes how weird that sounds coming from a grown man. You could see the panic set in once he remembers that everything is being filmed. Symbolically, this speaks to the reality of modern internet culture, where a single clip moment can completely override any sort of context. If that clip of Shane surfaced online by itself, people could easily twist it into something weird or creepy. It's really a commentary on just how fragile public image has become in this social media era. One awkward sentence or one photograph or poorly phrased joke, and suddenly the internet can build an entirely different narrative around you. Then at the end, Shane says this.
So I was in on this. They didn't trick me. I was doing a favor for Drake. Me and him are friends.
And what Shane says here is really just another layer, because if he actually believed any of those things about Drake, he definitely wouldn't be participating in any of this. Shane is just a comedian who said something he didn't mean, and he also turns out to be a massive fan of Drake. He's a big fan of Drake. His fandom is well documented. I heard that Shane spent over 14 hours on set that day and that his energy was overwhelmingly positive, and honestly multiple people told me that Shane is a really good guy. But there is another layer that fits the storyline itself. Drake's son Adonis is one of the purest representations of Drake. They share the same DNA, so the whole scene could really be a greater metaphor for going against authority, directly disobeying the rules of a power structure, then running off free and getting away. In fact, it puts Adonis in the driver's seat with full control of the situation, whereas the entity who usually has the power is completely powerless, which sounds familiar when you look at Drake and what he's going through with his label. The scene then switches to a 1934 animated film called Jack Frost. In this film, all the animals of the kingdom are happy and content in the fall weather. However, they also know that winter is coming and they need to prepare and take shelter. All the animals are afraid of the winter except for this one stubborn grizzly bear. The bear is extremely ignorant to the danger and power of Mother Nature and feels like he's strong enough to withstand it.
I don't have to worry. I don't have to care. My coat is very furry. I'm a grizzly bear.
The bear is basically saying, like, what do I have to worry about? I'm a grizzly bear, right? So the bear is completely unbothered. He believes he's too powerful to be affected by anything nature throws at him. Winter isn't a threat, at least not in his mind. But then Old Man Winter arrives. And with that, the temperature drops, the forest freezes over, and suddenly the bear realizes he grossly miscalculated. Desperate, he hides inside a hollow log, only for Old Man Winter to seal the entrance shut with icicles, trapping the bear inside a frozen prison. Symbolically, it seems to mirror the dynamic between Drake and UMG. The grizzly bear represents the major label system itself, especially UMG. Grizzly bears sit at the top of the food chain. They have virtually no natural predators. They dominate their environment through their size and power. That's exactly how major labels have operated for decades. They've historically controlled the industry, dictated the rules, and faced little real resistance from the artist. The system has always been designed in the label's favor, and Drake had plenty of references to this in the ICEMAN zine that he released. And just think about it, when the battle with Kendrick was allegedly finessed, UMG likely approached it with the confidence of being untouchable. Just like the bear, they really didn't fear any consequences. But Drake, the Iceman, changes the weather, and in this interpretation, Drake becomes Old Man Winter because he's a force capable of changing the entire environment around him, a force the bear or UMG never properly accounted for. That's what makes the imagery interesting. The bear is defeated because the conditions around him shift beyond his control. Another Easter egg with this cartoon is the fact that the bear could be a representation of Kendrick Lamar, given the fact that the state flag for California does have a bear on it, and it's not just any bear, it's specifically the California grizzly bear, which ironically is extinct or dead due to the fact that humans killed them all. We even see a pumpkin character in this scene which represents Drake's October's very own, but it morphs into a snowman signifying the Iceman era. With the Jack Frost cartoon, there is another layer here that makes it even more interesting. The cartoon was animated by a man named Ub Iwerks, one of the most important figures in animation history, and a man widely credited with helping to create Mickey Mouse alongside Walt Disney. However, Iwerks eventually became deeply resentful of Disney because he felt his contributions to Mickey Mouse and to the company's overall success were constantly being overlooked while Walt received all the credit. There's even a famous story where a child asked Walt Disney to draw him a Mickey Mouse on a napkin, and Walt handed the pen to iWorks and said, "Why don't you draw Mickey and I'll sign it for them?" And supposedly iWorks snapped and said, "Draw your own Mickey," before storming off. He storms off and he quits. He leaves Disney. He starts his own studio independently. And Jack Frost was one of those films that he created independently after separating from the machine that helped make him famous. That alone already parallels a major theme surrounding Drake and the music industry, the idea of an artist realizing their value inside a system that profits massively from their creativity while not fully respecting their contribution. A creator who helped build an empire, eventually reaching a breaking point with the people above him, just like Michael Jackson, Prince, and Drake. But then there's one more layer here that makes the symbolism even crazier. Jack Frost was produced using a color process called Cincolor, an early animation technology that heavily relied on 3 primary tones: blue, green, and red, the same colors that Drake has used over and over again throughout the ICEMAN era. It really is a crazy layer tying back to the red, blue, green theme. In episode 4, Drake's team is showcasing the exact portion of the cartoon where Old Man Winter comes and freezes everything over. However, when they zoom out, we see some familiar characters. The Pinocchios are back, but they're like extremely creepy looking. The first thing to take notice of is the barred windows, making the entire set look like a prison cell. However, if you look close enough, you can see that these are just window blinds that have been positioned to resemble an actual jail. The jail bar's visual is meant to symbolize that the Pinocchios are trapped with the plan that they are orchestrating. We see them staring at the Jack Frost cartoon, which is a symbol for Drake, aka the Iceman. They are quite literally watching Drake dominate and fully aware of his power, but still going through with their plan. On one hand, they look like they're ready for war, as they have guns ready and are clearly on high alert, but you can see that the blinds are even disturbed on one of the windows, indicating that they are nervous and actively checking to see if someone is coming. They're hiding out, they're doing a bunch of shady, illegal shit. This entire segment is 100% meant to symbolize a hideout for their corruption. You can even see that there are a bunch of flight cases scattered throughout the room, indicating that these guys are basically on the run. While all this is going on, the track that we hear in the background turns out to be track 3, Whisper My Name, and again, Drake's team did an excellent job of pairing the visuals with the lyrics, because Drake opens up the track by saying this:
"Ash to ashes, dust to dust, the dustiest niggas been fucking with us."
So Drake starts off with this specific line, and he's essentially describing the Pinocchios, more specifically Lucien Grange, as he even had an image inside of his zine of when he high-fived Dr. Dre at the Grammys, where the words applied to his head is "Remember you are dust." Now Drake starts off the Whisper My Name track with a line that is describing this exact picture verbatim.
"Ash to ashes, dust to dust, the dustiest niggas been fucking with us."
I even noticed that one of the Pinocchios is breathing pretty heavy, which adds to the anxiety in the room. The camera deliberately chooses to focus on this particular Pinocchio for a reason. You'll notice that the Pinocchio has blue eyes, which makes it stand out from the mask itself. What's really interesting is how the Pinocchio character evolved over the last 3 episodes. In episode 2, we had a more polished, cartoonish, plastic version chasing Drake around Manchester, and I always read into that character as symbolizing an artist like Kendrick, a true puppet in every sense. But by episode 3, we saw 4 Pinocchios wearing these homemade costumes with very distinct bow ties, all planning something in a meeting, which to me clearly represented industry executives, and I dropped the names of the people who I thought they were in that breakdown. But in episode 4, they evolve again. The Pinocchios now have this cinematic horror-style appearance, and they're deliberately designed to be human. In fact, the company that was commissioned to make these masks specialize in horror-type art. We start noticing details like human hands, ears, hair, and eyes, so for the first time, Drake's team is giving real human characteristics to a fictional cartoon figure. Their long noses symbolize deception and lies in every sense of the word, and some of these Pinocchios have very distinct features that act as intentional clues. They plant these little tiny characteristics on these Pinocchios that definitely act as clues. With that said, we can't go any further without revisiting episode 3 because Drake's team is continuing the story in a linear way. These episodes are absolutely connected and continuing along with the storyline. In episode 3, Drake meets with a woman, and you'll soon realize that a woman also becomes a major connection point in episode 4. The woman acts as a key piece of the puzzle. After speaking with her, Drake receives a specific piece of information, and immediately afterward, he changes into an all-white outfit, something we also see him do in episode 4. But the most important visual involving this woman comes when she pulls out a Pinocchio snow globe and begins winding it up. Symbolically, this is a clear metaphor for a woman controlling or playing one of the Pinocchios behind the scenes. There's also the fact that Drake's team put a lot of focus on the Mother Abu statue in Italy, which is a statue that represents a powerful woman pulling the strings behind the scenes. The statue is basically a symbol of who you think is in charge might not be that person at all. Now, it was in my previous breakdown where I didn't give this woman a name, but as time progressed, I feel way more comfortable with naming her. You'll notice she's wearing the merch from a rapper, and that person is Lil Yachty, as these are Concrete Boy's pants. You'll also notice that when she sits down, she starts watching old home videos of Drake, almost like she's reminiscing on old times. Something very specific about those videos is if you look, Drake is wearing an October's Very Own hoodie. I think the woman is Sophia Richie, aka Sophia Grange. Not only did Drake's team cast a Sophia look-alike woman for this character, but Sophia has a past of modeling rapper merch, specifically the merch that Drake is wearing in the video that she's watching, October's Very Own. In fact, Drake featured multiple photos of Sophia on his Plot Twist account, which was an account that surfaced directly after the battle. Then to add an even deeper layer, the Plot Twist account only follows 2 people, and Sophia Grange is one of them. You'll even see that she's drinking red wine and more specifically smoking a cigarette, something that Sophia had made headlines for being caught doing multiple times. As you guys know, Sophia is married to Elliot Grange, which is Lucien Grange's son. She's now part of that family, but what's even more interesting is the fact that the video that she's watching from Drake features his track called Stuck. Sophia is the daughter of Lionel Richie, who has the smash hit Stuck on You. What's even more interesting is Lionel performed this exact record at Sophia and Elliot's wedding for their first dance. So one song has the lyrics Stuck on You, the other has the lyrics Stuck with You. So look, at this point there are just way too many clues pointing to this character representing Sophia Grange. So the question is, why is she winding up and playing one of the Pinocchios, all while Drake specifically posted her in an account called Plot Twist? It's interesting, very interesting. From there, we saw Drake in his new costume going through a contract negotiation, but understanding that if he doesn't renew or agree to UMG's terms, that they'll likely do him dirty. He's recouped on his $400 million contract incredibly fast, and I believe that leverage allowed for him to ask UMG for way more than they ever expected, most likely ownership of his catalog, plus a number that made them extremely angry. Whatever it was that Drake asked them for, I think they thought it was like preposterous, right? Like they were offended by it. You can even see the man Drake is negotiating with asking him to hand over the bag, which symbolizes ownership, independence, and his music. But before all those powerful investors and industry figures emerged, Drake looks up at a man dressed entirely in black who's standing above everyone else. At the time when I caught this detail, I initially thought that Drake might have someone powerful on the inside feeding him information from the top. But as things have evolved, I think he could represent something completely different. I think this guy might actually represent a private equity billionaire or some kind of outside business force that Drake partners with to finesse the entire situation. He's the only character dressed in all black. which makes him feel separate from everyone else, almost like a shadow figure or a power move that Drake had sitting in his back pocket the entire time. This guy could represent a huge part of Drake's next business move. When we get back to episode 4, a hidden detail I also noticed was this Bud Light beer case on the floor, and this will be really important for an upcoming clue. You'll also notice that once again, Drake's team is deliberately pairing specific lyrics to match perfectly with the visuals.
My white label had to go white label shit when he stepped out his body and finally got high.
So Drake is referring to how Kendrick Lamar's diss tracks were allegedly white labeled to help reactors avoid copyright claims. And it was the first time in UMG's history that this sort of practice had happened for an artist, and it happened during an extremely suspicious time. White labeling is a very key part of Drake's lawsuit against the label, so pairing that allegation with this visual gives viewers even more insight into who these masked characters are and what they represent. And I'll say it again, UMG in the history of their company had never whitelisted for anyone before until this moment. Another major thing to take note of here is you'll also notice that Drake applies a very interesting line and transition into one specific Pinocchio.
Hand me the tools like I'm picking a lot. Me and white bitches been kissing a lot.
So right after Drake talks about his white label doing him dirty, aka his Caucasian label, he claims that he's been handed the tools to pick a lock, followed by the fact that he just so happens to be kissing a lot of white women. Basically, he's spelling it out for you right here in these bars. There's a white woman somewhere that gave him a key piece of information that he's been holding on to. This is exactly why I brought up Sophia Grange earlier, because in that scene, she metaphorically gives Drake a key to get into that hidden door, and this was so critical that it allowed him to go through a character transformation ahead of his negotiation.
Hand me the tools like I'm picking a lock. Me and white bitches been kissing a lot.
It's almost like he wrote the record with the visuals in mind, because it fits too good. The scene switches and we see 3 old televisions, and they act as a surveillance system for a streaming bot farm. For those who are unaware, basically thousands of mobile phones can be programmed to listen to songs, comment on socials, and manipulate things however they like. This is a major part of Drake's lawsuit against UMG. Kendrick had at least 100 million streams removed by Spotify during their bot purge. His track Luther with SZA also got hit really hard. We saw Drake's diss tracks in the battle on YouTube get bombarded with botted comments and dislikes, and Drake is 100% confident in these claims. There shouldn't be anyone in 2026 who hasn't come to terms with the fact that Kendrick used bots. Like, it's pretty obvious. It's obvious. We see 3 different shots of the bot farm, and not a single human being appears in any of the frames. This is deliberate, as it shows that physical human interaction wasn't required at all. These narratives were created and pushed entirely through digital means. However, you can see that the TVs don't give the best connection as they're flashing and full of static. This is a sign that the connection to the bots is being disrupted by something, or their plan is at great risk of being exposed. Somebody seems to be onto their plan. The surveillance shot is directly contrasted with one of the Pinocchios at a workstation actively equipping the phones. This visual is meant to symbolize someone on the inside setting up the bots in the battle. One man in particular is Kojo Osamaha, who worked with Interscope. He was one of the main people of interest in Drake's lawsuit against UMG, and someone they had great difficulty tracking down. The guy was basically on the run. Kojo was the man who had the connection to the guy that could run the bots. Kojo never ran the bots, right? But he allegedly knew the guy that could. He set it up. The next set of visuals really helps tie the entire scene together. We see a table with all the things required to assemble phones for a bot farm. We see wires, drills, cases, soldering equipment, and a bunch of mobile phones. We also see a set of older vintage headphones on the table, which I believe is a clear link to the fact that the music is being digitally manipulated. There's no reason for these headphones to even be on this table. They aren't required for building the bots at all, and the fact that they're older headphones is a stronger symbol of just how long this has been going on in the industry. Manipulation and corruption has basically been baked into the music industry since it started. Long before bots, labels have always used payola and even purchased their own cassettes, CDs, and albums in mass quantities to manipulate sales. Michael Jackson talked about a lot of these things, right? And keep in mind, the glove is on the cover. Next, we even see our working Pinocchio, who almost certainly represents Kojo, grab 5 phones from the table, and he passes by a mysterious man seated at a computer. But notice that this guy is not a Pinocchio. That's because this guy symbolizes an outside source. He's not part of the plan at all. He's just doing what he's done for so many other labels and artists. We see code and an interface running in real time because essentially he's running the bot farm. He's programming the phones with whatever he wants them to do or say. All this guy's really doing is executing what Kojo hired him to do, but it goes far beyond music because bots were heavily used on places like Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube comments during the battle. And once again, the visuals are fitting beautifully with the lyrics here.
Nowadays, y'all don't want to put in no work. Y'all just want to jump to the front of the line.
So it's here where Drake alludes to Kendrick not actually putting in the work to obtain the moment that he got, claiming he basically jumped the line because it was largely manufactured. And while Drake says all that, he's literally showing you on stream how it happened. Compared to what he was doing in 2017, yeah, Kendrick had gone cold. His music wasn't making waves like it used to. That's just the facts. The next visual shows a Pinocchio looking into a mirror, and the room itself is designed to resemble a prison. The Pinocchios don't actually have much in this space. Even the shot with the sofa and TV could easily symbolize a common TV area in a correctional facility. It's almost like Drake's team designed this to look like a prison and a hideout all at the same time. The mirror shot paired with the Pinocchio mask is honestly one of the strongest visuals in the entire episode, and it's pretty simple when you think about it. What does the Pinocchio see when it looks into the mirror? Well, it's not a powerful executive, and it's definitely not some untouchable industry figure. All he sees is a liar and a fraud, and Drake knows that. That's the whole point of the shot and really this entire segment. Think of it like this, right? Like the people who are watching this stream who did these things, they're basically watching a mirror. Like Drake's making them look in a mirror. They're watching their life, right? That's what he meant on Janice.
They say the truth will set you free. Well, mine is gonna stream while you watching HD.
Up next, we see one of the Pinocchios, and this is one of the most loaded visuals yet. We can see that he's seated and he loads a shotgun with 5 rounds. However, this time we do have a very distinct clue, and this is the Virginia for Lovers hat. Many people claim that this was directed at Pusha T or Pharrell, given the fact that they're both from Virginia. Pusha T's wife is also named Virginia, and Pharrell even had merch with this exact slogan on it. And while I won't count out that this could be a double or maybe even a triple entendre through visual imagery, I feel like Drake is telling a story here that's way over Pusha or Pharrell's heads. You really got to think about the setting that he's showing us and also what he's saying in the music, and when you do that, it's pretty clear that we are in a hideout where bots and corruption is taking place. I just don't see a world where Pharrell or Pusha T fits into this story and what's being told. I just don't. What I believe this specific scene is pointing to is how they tried to damage Drake's reputation through the Super Bowl halftime show. This is Jesse Collins, who works closely with Jay-Z's Rock Nation, and he's the producer of the halftime show, the same halftime show that Drake specifically listed in the lawsuit against UMG.
Say, Drake, I hear you like I'm young. That night, ever gonna sell Black One.
There was an audible gasp when we heard those first few notes.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was something that it was just the way Kendrick wanted to put it together.
You go, Rihanna, Kendrick. Can we even look forward to next year?
Listen, there's a guy up in a suite right now that's enjoying the game, and that's on him.
Jesse played one of the biggest roles that you could possibly play in the halftime show because he produced it. In fact, when Kendrick was picked for the Super Bowl in New Orleans, Jesse did an interview with Variety, and he talked about their reasons for selecting Kendrick. It was in that very interview where Jesse proudly said that he was from Virginia. What's even crazier is Jesse is also the person who produces the Emmys, another award show that had comedic jokes where they clown Drake with the battle.
If Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime special wins, ooh, I'm really gonna hear it from Drake.
If the Super Bowl and Emmys was all bad enough, guess who also produced the Grammy Award show? Jesse Collins. He produced all 3 of those shows.
Not like us, Kendrick Lamar.
What's up with it?
They even found a way to bring up the battle again at the Grammys in 2026.
I actually thought about writing a few jokes, roasting you, but then I remembered what you can do to light-skinned dudes from other countries. Yeah, me and my delegation are still recovering from the pain.
But I'm not even done, because guess who produced the 2025 BET Hip Hop Awards? Jesse Collins. Same guy. I'm not lying.
What's up, LA? Come on.
And I'm still not done, because guess who produced the iHeart Music Awards? Jesse Collins, exact same guy. And just so you know I'm not spinning my tires here, Jesse Collins was specifically named in Drake's lawsuit and targeted due to his role in orchestrating Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. Jay-Z literally hired this guy back in 2020 to take care of every single Super Bowl halftime show. Jesse and Jay-Z are doing big business together. Right? Massive. Keep in mind, all these award shows take place in Los Angeles, the same place where Kendrick grew up and came up.
What's up, LA? Come on.
Some of you might not think that matters, but you can't deny the politics that exist inside the entertainment industry. These events are not just award shows, they're like networking conventions. These rooms are filled with executives and producers, managers, label people, media figures, and whether people want to admit it or not, behind-the-scenes relationships matter. Favors and access matters, and who you know matters. So when the same names in the same city with the exact same institution keep showing up over and over again, I don't think it's crazy to ask the question, is any of this organic at all, or is there something happening behind the curtain? But if you still don't believe me, there's another clue that points towards Jesse. Look at what's on the table. We see a handgun and some other unknown items, but what's clear is the Bud Light beer can. Remember, I already pointed out the Bud Light box. Now, if you look at the 2024 NFL season, Bud Light was the official beer sponsor as well as the official beer sponsor of the Super Bowl. And this is a major clue that 100% points towards Jesse Collins, Roc Nation, Jay-Z, and the Super Bowl. Another detail that stands out is the fact that his gloves are sitting on the table while he loads the shotgun with his bare hands. Usually when you commit a crime, gloves are used to conceal and hide your fingerprints, but here the gloves are off. He's touching every bullet directly, so metaphorically his fingerprints are all over this entire campaign. His involvement isn't hidden or accidental. The video is framing him as someone who had a direct hand in loading the weapon that was used against Drake's reputation, one event at a time. Look, Drake was up against some very powerful forces here, likely Roc Nation being one of them. Like, this was a lot bigger than Kendrick Lamar. Everything that happens inside this building represents the people involved being trapped inside their own plan. Kojo literally had a company called Nowhere to Hide LLC, and that's exactly what this building symbolizes. There's nowhere to run. They can't conceal the setup or the plan once it starts collapsing. That's what makes it so poetic. The name of Kojo's own company literally describes the condition of the people involved. That's exactly why the camera pans up from the Pinocchio loading the shotgun to show the window with the jail bars. What's even more crazy is Drake seemingly knew what these guys were planning long before the battle even started. He literally mentioned Kojo and his exact registered LLC on Family Matters.
Anthony set up the plays. Kojo be charging you double for none. There's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to hide, you know what I mean.
He fucking called it. He knew, and I think he knows more. I think he knows way more. So at this point in the story, I believe Not Like Us hasn't actually dropped yet. What Drake is showing you is the hidden or invisible forces that went into the battle. The things completely outside of the actual music that had a major impact, but the audience couldn't see it. The hideout was the corruption that took place, and it was the backing for everything that was to follow. Next, we see two Pinocchios driving what appears to be a Ford vehicle, and outside of these two characters being in the shot, the most visible and standout item is the mustard-colored glove. As I said previously, these Pinocchios are given distinct little characteristics that often serve as clues. He's the only Pinocchio with that color glove. You can also see that the passenger Pinocchio only has one small dim light above him turned on. I believe these two characters represent DJ Mustard and Kendrick Lamar. Mustard was the producer behind Not Like Us, and the reason why he's driving the vehicle is because a lot of people argued that the beat itself carried and drove that record. Then we have Kendrick Lamar finally getting that bit of spotlight that he had been chasing, and to be fair, this battle absolutely gave him a massive moment. But before that, if we're being honest, Kendrick's career had cooled off musically and commercially compared to the peak he reached with Damn in 2017. The facts are, Kendrick Lamar wasn't dominating the conversation in hip-hop from 2018 all the ways up to 2024 until the battle happened. Only then did he get the spotlight on him in a way that it never was before. That's why the lighting choice feels important, because at the Super Bowl, Kendrick was literally placed under a spotlight, and in one part of his performance, he was standing beneath a single streetlight, just like the visual in this vehicle. So those are some more clues that point to it being them in the car. The next shot takes us to the back seat of the car, where we see two more Pinocchios holding the same loaded shotgun alongside a very familiar object, the camouflage bag. This bag was first introduced in episode 2 before becoming an even bigger focal point in episode 3. What this entire vehicle is showing us right now is the battle playing out in real time. The hideout was where all the corruption and behind the scenes things went down to make sure everything was successful, but now the plan is officially being put in motion. They are on the road, literally driving this thing forward. This is Not Like Us, the Grammys, the Super Bowl, all happening in this vehicle. One important detail is that we never actually see the faces of the two Pinocchios sitting in the back. That's likely intentional because they represent executives and on-scene power players. They were never publicly visible during the battle itself, but they've been backseat drivers the entire time. The shotgun represents the overwhelming level of support, power, and backup that Kendrick had throughout the battle. Basically, he had a lot of backing for everything that took place. The guy was armed with a lot of backup, a lot. But the most important visual detail is the placement of the bag. It sits directly in the center of all four Pinocchios because the entire motive behind everything traces back to this bag. This is the entire point. The bag is the center of attention. They want to lower Drake's value, control his leverage, and keep him locked in. Everything is about the bag, and that's what makes Kendrick an even bigger puppet in the larger picture. He's actually pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things because the main driving force for this whole thing is the bag and the mission to devalue Drake. It's crazy he just beat MJ's record because he talked about all those same things, which is why it's like a deeper meaning to have that glove on the cover. However, next we see a slow transition into a flock of vultures flying overhead, and I'm almost certain these are turkey vultures. At first I assumed that these were owls in relation to Drake and his team, but my brother pointed out that the birds looked a lot more like vultures, and then we were able to match them perfectly with the turkey vulture. You could see them gliding and circling, which is exactly what they do when they're searching for food. What's interesting about vultures is they don't actually kill anything themselves. They're just scavengers. They feed on animals that are already dead or dying. Symbolically, vultures have been used in film, books, and art for decades as a sign that death is coming or that a person's fate has already been decided. And I feel like what Drake's team did with this may have been inspired by Sinners. There's a scene in Sinners where a vampire manages to get inside a family's home. From the outside, everything still appears normal, and we never actually see anyone die, but then vultures begin circling above the house, and they eventually land on the roof. The birds become the audience's first clue that something terrible has already happened inside. Before the movie ever reveals the bodies, nature itself is already telling us that the house is lost. This appears to be the exact same language that Drake's team is using to a T. We saw the Pinocchios drive away believing that they won, but the moment that these vultures appear, that symbolism changes everything because the birds are telling us that something has already gone wrong for them. However, the scene then switches to Drake standing in a graveyard dressed entirely in white at what appears to be a funeral. What makes this transition so fascinating is the way the vultures act as a visual bridge between the Pinocchios and Drake. The three shots are directly connected. We go from the Pinocchios driving away with the bag, to the vulture circling overhead, to Drake standing at a funeral, with each shot slowly fading into the next. The birds are telling us as the viewer that somebody died or someone's about to die, we just don't know who yet. Well, Drake's white outfit is very important. White at a funeral is usually associated with a rebirth, a resurrection, or some sort of personal transformation. Keep in mind, the Pinocchio's plan required Drake to die. Not literally, but very much a symbolic death. His reputation took a massive hit, many people declared him dead, and the version of Drake that existed before the battle was supposedly already buried. Or was it? Remember when Drake said this on the Fighting Irish freestyle because it absolutely links to this funeral scene.
Niggas wanted trouble, grabbed a shovel and dug up some ditches, cover my body in dirt, but that wasn't me. That wasn't me. That was a body double and we've done dozens of switches.
This funeral is not just Drake mourning himself, it's Drake attending the burial that the public already had for him. The internet declared the guy dead, the industry danced on his grave, and now he's calmly standing at this ceremony basically saying, "You buried the wrong version of me." Especially considering the majority of what Kendrick said about him were all lies. However, becoming the victim of this battle was something that he had to sacrifice in order to expose the corruption behind it. He had to take the hit. That's why he surrendered the bag to the Pinocchios in episode 3 and let them take it. By the time we reach this graveyard scene, the battle is over, the Grammys are done, the Super Bowl already happened, they have the bag, their plan went off without a hitch, and from their perspective, they won. They think Drake is a corpse, but Drake doesn't look angry. He doesn't even seem defeated. He doesn't even seem surprised. He's actually very calm, almost like he knows something that they don't. And that's what makes the vultures so fascinating, because when those birds appeared earlier in the story, they may not have been circling who everybody thought they were. Drake's team filmed this shot through a massive wreath of flowers, and it's a really interesting point of view. Obviously, it helps bring us into the funeral setting, but it also creates a feeling of separation. Drake really seems isolated from the rest of the world in this moment, and that's because this whole thing was deeply personal for him. I can't imagine ever being put through what he went through, but what's fascinating is how calm he seems. Funerals are usually really emotional. Sometimes people get angry, sometimes people break down, but Drake doesn't appear defeated in this scene. In fact, this is probably the best representation of his demeanor since the battle happened. Whether you agree with his perspective or not, you never saw Drake crash out. You never saw him publicly unravel. Aside from trolling hip-hop media with that Bobby Altov interview, that's the only interview he did. The guy simply absorbed this massive hit, and he stayed well composed right up until ICEMAN dropped. Also notice how Drake has 2 diamond teardrops on his face. This is another major sign of what's taking place here. The 2 diamond teardrops really tell you everything. Normally, tears represent vulnerability. They're one of the most emotional things a person can show, but Drake's tears aren't real tears anymore. They're frozen solid. Even his sadness has turned into ice. That's what makes this visual so powerful, because the pain is still there, the hurt is still there, but something about him has changed. The person who went through the battle is still standing, but he doesn't seem to be the same person anymore. And I think this is like the best explanation possible for what Iceman means, this right here. And this actually ties right back into Drake's zine, where he specifically stated that Iceman will be performed by Aubrey Graham and not Drake. At the time, a lot of people glossed over that detail, but this funeral scene feels absolutely connected to it. The public buried Drake, but Aubrey Graham walked away from that grave. The intro track, Make Them Cry, it describes this funeral scene perfectly.
What died back in 2024 was a big piece. So it's like the shit is me, but it isn't me. Y'all keep on asking me what it did to me. That's what it did to me. When I dig deep, they say dig deeper. Tell us how it felt to meet the Grim Reaper.
I didn't see many people talk about these lines because they were too busy talking about the disses on the album, and honestly that surprised me because Drake is telling you exactly what this funeral scene is about. The guy's just not the same person after everything he went through, and I don't know how he could be. Do you really think it's a coincidence that both MJ and Drake at the exact same points in their careers were saying the exact same things about the exact same industry?
We can't let them get away with what they're trying to do, because at Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony. Several billion.
Don't you think it feels a little unfair to give such credence into what Michael was saying, but completely write off Drake's claims as if there's no way that these things happen to him? Do you really think he will be doing all this? Do you think he will be this confident in everything that he's saying? Just think about it. Remember, he's got the glove on the cover, and I keep bringing this up because it's like it's a layered reference. We then see a fleet of Escalades driving into the cemetery, and this appears to be a direct pull from one of my favorite movies, The Godfather. As you can see, these shots are extremely similar, right down to the vehicles curving all to the left. The scene then switches to Drake leaving the cemetery with a woman dressed entirely in black gripping his sleeve. Her real name is Tala Bressan, and she represents a critical part of the story, as I believe she is someone from the other side who is helping Drake. You'll see in my upcoming breakdown that she's the main character in the Janice STFU video. There's some classic yin and yang symbolism going on here, which was something else that showed up in the zine. This woman appears to represent a major link to a new chapter or rebirth for Drake. I truly believe the woman represents a resurrection for Drake, and one that is directly linked to him getting revenge. And he actually mentions this on Janice, how they tried to kill him, but a woman resurrected him, and that's the next video after this.
They tried to kill me once, but darling, you just resurrected me.
We then see Drake seated in the vehicle with the window down with this very cold, focused, and almost angry look on his face. The tears are still present, so he's very much wearing the pain on his face. We see that the woman is seated next to Drake in the vehicle, but her sunglasses are on. Emotionally, she's very hard to read because her eyes are hidden. Drake stares at her with a face that's tough to really describe. He almost has this little smirk on his face, but at the same time, he's looking at her a little bit uneasy. Notice she doesn't even look back at him, she just stares straight ahead. This scene is part of what made this the most difficult breakdown in my entire career, because it's the difference in, is this girl on Drake's side or is she against him? Is she helping him or is she setting him up? I thought long and hard about this scenario, but the fact that she's leaving the funeral with Drake after he just went through a lot of horrible things, if this woman was meant to symbolize even more harm to his character, there's no way she will be showing up in this moment. I also noticed that she is wearing a cross, which supports the narrative that this woman acted as some sort of resurrection for him. I don't think she's simply good or evil, I think she represents access. She knows something Drake was not supposed to know. That's why her eyes are hidden. She's not emotionally open to us because her role in the story probably isn't love, it's information. The woman almost looks a little bit anxious because she's probably betraying someone in a major way. Wait till we get to the Janice breakdown because that's where it gets even more crazy. Another thing I couldn't crack was the item that Drake is wearing around his neck. It definitely looks like a ring, but identifying it is nearly impossible. There is the ring at the end of Family Matters that we never figured out what it meant, but like it's impossible to know if that's what he's wearing. The scene then switches to one of the most powerful visuals in the entire episode 4 stream. We see Drake surrounded by his entire team, many of the same people who have been with him since the very beginning. This scene was filmed at the Greek Theater inside Guild Park in Scarborough, and if it looks familiar, that's because Drake shot the Headlines music video at this exact location back in 2011. In fact, he went as far as matching some of the people in the frame and positioned them in nearly the exact same spots. What's interesting is the contrast between the two moments. Not only does this show just how far Drake has come, but it highlights how much the people around him have evolved as well. Back in 2011, these were just a group of hungry young men from Toronto trying to build something special. But fast forward to 2026, and not only are they all standing beside Drake, but virtually everyone in this shot has elevated their position in a major way. Drake didn't surround himself with a bunch of chickens, right? Like a lot of these guys are executives and business owners, label owners, like they're all very successful. Drake is making a major statement with this shot. Remember what we just saw and what the guy just went through. We just watched visuals representing the alleged manipulation of the battle, the inflation of Not Like Us, the bots used to spin narratives, the Super Bowl, and even Drake symbolically mourning the version of himself that the public deemed dead as a result of everything that happened. This can't be understated. They tried to completely destroy him. Completely. The most interesting thing about this is the location itself adds a whole other layer to the scene. Guild Park isn't just a random place in Toronto. The entire park is built from old pieces from Toronto's history. It's built from old buildings that were demolished in the city, but the most important parts were preserved. The columns, archways, and structures that you see surrounding Drake are actually pieces of older buildings and landmarks that were saved and rebuilt into something new. And when you think about everything we just watched, that's pretty interesting. The location where Drake is standing literally exists because these pieces survived destruction. That's why this shot is almost certainly tied to his legacy and protecting it. This is the ICEMAN era in a single frame. You can even see that Jordan makes a very distinct set of hand gestures in this shot. One kind of looks like a devil, like it's demon time, and then the other looked like he's loading a clip and cocking back a pistol. Drake is ready for war at this point, and he's armed with everything that he needs, possibly because of the woman. This shot right here is 100 gigs, this is the plot twist, this is the lawsuit, this is all the power plays that he made over the last 2 years distilled into one image, and that's why this shot feels so powerful. To me, this image is Drake essentially saying, your plan didn't work, I'm still here, I still have my people, I'm far more powerful than you realized, you completely miscalculated who I was, and most importantly, you thought this would be my ending, but it's actually the beginning of something else, and I'm far from done with you. To me, this is the best shot in the entire episode, by far. I noticed that this style of architecture with the columns also showed up in Drake's zine, and this is definitely common at courthouses in America, especially the Supreme Court. In fact, the Greek theater shot looks very similar when you think about it. What's interesting about this particular slide in the zine is it's paired with the day that Vybz Kartel was released from prison after 13 years, all for a crime he said he didn't commit, and there was even evidence that one of the jurors was corrupt and the judge knew about it but still went ahead with the trial. Vybz tried many times to appeal his case and it didn't work. However, once it got to the Supreme Court, which is the highest place you can go, they deemed his case as corrupt and they set him free. And look, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how far this could go, but I do think that Drake is willing to take it as far as it needs to go. In the next scene, we see that just like the Jack Frost movie, Old Man Winter has finally arrived and brought complete destruction with him. We see a vehicle flipped upside down with debris scattered everywhere, making it clear that something catastrophic has taken place. Soon enough, we discover that all 4 Pinocchios are lying dead in the snow. 2 are face down, 1 is lying on his side, 1's on his back, some don't appear to have any visible wounds, while 2 seem to have suffered from clean gunshots to the head. 3 of them have pistols beside them, while one remains lying on top of the exact same shotgun that we've seen throughout the entire episode. Drake then calmly walks past them, retrieves the bag from the vehicle, and slowly walks through the carnage and jumps into a truck. And as far as how they die, we don't actually see what happened. And that's what's important, because we don't see Drake kill anyone, we don't see a crash, and we don't see a shootout. We just see the aftermath, and I think that's the entire point. Throughout episode 4, the vehicle represented the operation itself. It represented the battle, the narratives, the machine, and all the forces pushing everything forward. Earlier, we watched these same Pinocchios steal the bag, they loaded their weapons, and they literally drove the plan into motion, but now the vehicle is flipped over because the operation crashed. The Pinocchios don't die because Drake hunted them or killed them, they die because their plan collapses on its own. The most interesting detail is that they're still surrounded by their own weapons, the same weapons that they used against Drake to hurt him. It's their own greed, their own lies, and ultimately their own weapons against Drake that destroy them. Drake doesn't create the carnage, he's simply walking through the aftermath. And what's really dope is Drake continues to tell you this later in the episode 4 stream. In fact, it's in one of my favorite videos of the entire ICEMAN series, Make Them Pay, where he reinforces this idea. Throughout that animated video, every enemy who plots against Drake ends up being destroyed by the very thing that they attempted to hurt him with. The ghost character lunges at him and crashes into the cooler door and dies. The rapper who tries to shoot Drake ends up being killed when his own bullet fires backwards and strikes him in the head. The character that clearly resembles Kendrick Lamar attempts to offer Drake friendship only to weaponize the relationship against him, but that same manipulation eventually becomes the thing that destroys him. The executive tries to lure Drake in with money and contracts, but while doing so, the ash from his cigar falls onto himself and he literally burns to death. None of these characters are defeated by Drake directly, they're all defeated because of their action against him. Thematically, what you saw in Make Them Pay is exactly what's happening with these Pinocchios. Their fate isn't decided as some act of revenge, their downfall was built into the plan from the very beginning. They loaded the weapons, they stole the bag, they got into the vehicle, they pushed the operation forward, and eventually the entire thing flipped upside down on top of them. Drake doesn't arrive in this scene as a killer or a hitman, he's arriving as someone that survived it. And there are some interesting details about Drake. It took me a while to even notice this, but Drake is wearing red shoes, and it's such a deliberate color choice that it feels impossible to ignore. One possible reading comes from Psalm 58:10. The righteous will rejoice when vengeance is done, they will wash their feet in the blood of the wicked. Now, if the Pinocchios represent corruption, deception, and betrayal, which they do, then Drake walking through the aftermath in red shoes could symbolize that justice has finally been served, not because he caused it, but because those responsible were ultimately judged by their own actions. He's more or less walking in the blood of his enemies. All we see Drake do is calmly take back what was always his. There's no need for struggle, violence, or negotiation. He simply picks it up because the truth doesn't have to steal what already belongs to it. There is another detail that makes this even more interesting, and it was in Drake's zine where he included imagery of owls hunting rats in the snow. And now, immediately after a scene was shown with Drake surrounded by his own team of owls, we're presented with 4 dead Pinocchios laying in the exact same environment. They're lying in the snow. Again, amazing storytelling by Drake's team. Drake gets into a 1986 Chevrolet K20 pickup truck. Now, that detail might seem random, but 1986 is also Drake's birthday. The bag represents Drake's freedom, it represents his music, it represents who he is, so I feel this truck makes a lot of sense. He's not pulling up in some fancy whip, he's in a working man's truck. Basically, Aubrey Graham is driving away as himself, with himself, and as the winner. But to end it off, we get a very familiar shot. The camera pans up and returns to the vultures, but what's interesting is there are way more birds now than what we saw earlier, which really tells me the fact that this flock is growing, it's not so much about the number of deaths, but it's about the certainty of death. Earlier, the vultures acted as a warning. Something in the story was already doomed, but we just didn't know who. However, it's with this ending where the answer is revealed. And that's what makes the first appearance of the birds brilliant. The story was designed in a way where we assumed the vultures were circling Drake because the entire world declared him dead after the battle. The internet declared him finished. People held the funeral for him before he was even buried, but they misidentified the corpse. Episode 4 slowly reveals that we were looking at the wrong body. The vultures were never following Drake, they were following the Pinocchios. And that's what makes it so poetic, because basically when they all celebrated Drake's funeral, they didn't realize they were standing at their own. You know, this video was supposed to be a full breakdown of episode 4. Like, I was thinking this would be like 3 hours, and it probably would have been if I could get through it. But what happened to me is I got stuck, and like the problem was, you know, just to explain my process, when I finally do hit upload on YouTube for a video, right, that means I'm proud of that piece of work. Like, I'm proud of it. I'm done with it. I can let it go out into the ether, and then, you know, people can judge it. They can love it. They can hate it. But I'm proud of it, regardless of how they feel about it. And with this project, I couldn't get to the point where I was proud of it. And I just couldn't put it out. Like, this is just not how I work, right? I couldn't put it out. I wasn't ready. And I don't want to get to the point where I rush stuff and throw shit out just because some dude is like, hurry the fuck up. It's stressful when people do that, but like I can't let those people get in my head and make them impact my creative choices, like, for what I do, right? So obviously there's more coming. I hope you guys are okay with that.